your mind. Lose your mind.
Oh, wait, we're not even distance. I need to go this way. You need to come this way a little bit. Wrong way. I'm not even in that one.
There you
Am
are.
I?
I see you. Sweet. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Car. Game off. 2 cars.
It's like what we did back in school playing car.
Game off. Game on. Go. So, welcome to House Party Church 2.0. That's right. We're back at the House Party Church solely for a couple weeks. We're trying to help stop the spread. That's why we're socially distanced.
It's like 4.0.
4.0.
4.0.
We'll call it 4.0, maybe 9.3, we don't know. But we're trying to help stop the spread, so we're back to online. We hope that you're doing well. We hope you're having a good week. Today is a great day. We're excited. We are actually live on location. Well, not live. We're live on Wednesday. You're watching it taped.
We're live right now.
Live. We're always alive, unless we're dead. But we're in Fleming County, Kentucky. I don't know if you've ever been here. This is Lawrence's maybe first time here. So we're in Fleming County, filming our first today is our first in the series called The Bridge, and we're excited and we're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us at House Party Church.
Surely my God is strength of my soul. Your love defends me. Your love defends me. And when I feel like I'm all alone, your love defends me. Your love defends me. Day after day, night after night, I will remember you're with me in this fight. Although the battle it rages on, the war's already won. I know the war's already won. Surely my God is strength of my soul. Your love defends me. Your love defends me. And when I feel like I'm all alone, your love defends me. Your love defends me. We sing hallelujah. You're my portion, my salvation. Hallelujah. You're my portion, my salvation. Surely my God is strength of my soul. Your love defends me. Your love defends me. And when I feel like I'm all alone, your love defends me. Your love defends me. Surely my God is strength of my soul. Your love defends me. Your love defends me. And when I feel like I'm all alone, your love defends me. Your love defends me. We sing hallelujah. portion, my salvation.
Those darn cicadas.
One of the things about House Party Church is that there's not an opportunity for you to give an offering physically. And so every week we try to remind you, you can drop it off at the office, you can mail it in, you can give on the Church Center app, you can give online at madisonhills.org. We want to encourage you to stay faithful in your giving, even in the midst of the uncertainty. We've got all kinds of ministry coming up, all kinds of exciting things we're working on when we can get the go-ahead and everything socially distanced, all that. You already know, because you've probably seen it on Facebook or in your email, that August 1st, it's time to kick off. Hush! August 1st, it's time to kick off House Party Bingo. There's all kinds of opportunities for you and your family to engage, to serve, and to share with other people. And we hope and encourage you to invite your friends to share in that with you. You got anything to add to that?
Bingo!
What's his name-o?
All right. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I've tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new, Jesus, when I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you called me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Your love is the air I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. It's when you called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day.
few weeks ago, I was on Goggins and on the walking path there. I would tell you I was running, but you guys would know I'm lying. And I was just moving. And when I do my exercise, I always like to kind of turn on a fiction audiobook or a show or something to help my mind just completely zone out of the misery that I'm going through. And so I was listening to Jack Reacher, and he was catching bad guys left and right, and everything was good. And I thought I heard something behind me. And I thought, weird. And I just kind of kept going and moving, whatever that would look like. And as I kept moving, I heard it again. And I thought, man, what is that? And then the third time I heard it right behind me, it was a man on a bicycle shouting, "On your left!" And I kind of had to do this dive off the path to make sure that the poor man on the bike didn't hit me. And he turned and he starts laughing, and I'm kind of getting up, embarrassed, like it's one of those things, right? When you get scared like that, when something just comes from nowhere and it just lights up the fear center of your brain, it's frightening. And so sometimes there are times where things like that happen and we get scared, right? The car runs the red light, the person comes up behind you, the noise in your house that you didn't expect. And sometimes those things happen. And when those things happen, it activates what's called the amygdala. It's a part of our brain, and the amygdala triggers the rest of our body to get moving in a certain way to react to fear. The problem with that is that oftentimes when we activate our amygdala and when our fear center gets activated, it starts to elevate our heartbeat, it starts to raise our blood pressure, it starts to do a lot of things that for a moment help us survive where we are. But the longer we allow our amygdala to control how we think, the longer we allow our fear to drive us, the bigger problem we get. Because it leads to all sorts of long-term issues. You see, the human body wasn't designed to live in fear. When God created us, He created our brain, and He put the amygdala in on purpose, a survival thing, the fight or flight mode. It happened for a reason, but He didn't create us to live out of our amygdala. The issue is we as people, we've been conditioned. And we've been conditioned for hundreds of years to live in that kind of fear. There's an old saying that says, in the Bible, it says, "Do not fear," 366 times, because God knew you were going to need one for every day. But God didn't know that in 2020, there were actually going to be about 500 days. So there's not enough for that. But what happens over and over again is that we as people find ourselves afraid. We find ourselves scared. Today, we're kicking off a new series online at House Party Church. And the series that we're kicking off is called The Bridge. And the bridge is going to be all about how we as people can cross these bridges that come to us in our lives. Today we're talking about crossing the bridge from fear to faith. And see, here's the thing, I want you to know that I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I don't think that you're either fully in faith of Jesus or you're fully afraid. I think there's a lot of things that happen and a lot of places to go with that. One of the things that's important to know about this bridge is this is a bridge you can cross multiple times. This isn't just one day you're going to get rid of your fear forever, but this for us is a conscious choice that we make on the regular to cross the bridge and say, you know what, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. I'm going to allow this to be something that uses my faith. And again, this is, I think, the third time in 2020 that I've talked at least indirectly about fear, maybe more. But in the midst of global pandemics, almost World War III, in the midst of all of the craziness and in the midst of race riots and racial tension, in the midst of an election, it seems like fear on top of fear, doesn't it? Because you have your normal fears, right? You're afraid for your kids. You're always feared for your kids' safety. But now you're like, are my kids going to be safe going to school? My kids will not be safe if I keep them at home because they might not make it. And you're afraid for our country because you're always worried about the country that we get to live in. And this year you're like, you know what, this is the craziest election I've ever seen in my life because 2020 just keeps piling on and piling on. You're afraid about what your bank account looks like. And in your head, you're going, you know what, things are okay financially, but if the economy really crashes like the news tells me it's going to, and if things really get worse like they say it might, then maybe everything I've worked for is going to go away. Maybe for you're worried for your grandparents or your parents, and you know that you have barely been able to give them a hug in 6 months. And so here's the thing, fear is real. And it doesn't matter what year it is. We as people have been living in fear for a long time. The question I have for us is this. The question I have for us is our fear fueling us or is our faith fueling us? And so that's an easy question. Which one fuels me, my fear or my faith? You see, my fear keeps me awake at night. My fear is the thing that I struggle with and that I worry about. My fear is the thing that drives me crazy, that gives me all of my anxiety. My faith is the thing that reminds me that Jesus is the one who's in control. My faith is the one that reminds me that none of this is a surprise to God, the creator of the universe. My faith is the one that reminds me that God knows and sees all things. There's a story that I may have told you before, but it's a great story. It happens in 3 of the biographies of Jesus. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all tell the story of the time Jesus calmed the storm, which when that happens, that tells you it was a pretty significant event. And we're going to look at it in Mark chapter 4 today, but it's such an interesting reminder of what happens when you let fear fuel you instead of your faith. But it's in Mark chapter 4, and it starts like this in verse 35. It says, "That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let's go over to the other side.'" Depending on which gospel you read, Matthew, Mark, or Luke, there's all sorts of ministry and power and healing that happens that day. Jesus is teaching, he's healing people, he's casting out demons. There's all kinds of ministry going on. And when a day like that happens, where people are just pulling at you, where everything is coming to you, when that happens, then what you find is that you need rest. And so Jesus said, let's get out on the boats because we need rest. And so in verse 36, it says, leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. And there were also other boats with him. We don't know how many boats, we don't know how many people. We assume it was more than just Jesus and the 12. There were some other groups that were a little bit closer with him, but he leaves a large part of the crowd on the shore, and they go out in the boats, and they go out in the boats on purpose. They go out in the boats on purpose for the same reason you might go out in a boat, to relax, to get away, to rest, to hide. And so Jesus is out on the boat purposefully to rest. And he's out on the boat not with just some guys. He's out on the boat with professional fishermen who have for years been manning these seas. And they're in the Sea of Galilee. And we don't know a lot about the Sea of Galilee as American people, but the Sea of Galilee is known as being one of the calmer seas. The issue with the Sea of Galilee is that it's surrounded by mountains, so it makes it scenic and it makes it beautiful and it makes it calm. But the issue is that occasionally in the Sea of Galilee, the mountains will be hiding a storm that comes from nowhere. And so this day, when Jesus and the disciples are in the boat, the storm comes as a surprise. And when the storm comes as a surprise, it surprises everyone. And it turns out that it's not just a storm. This is like the storm, like George Clooney at his peak storm, perfect storm. It says this in verse 37. It says, a furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. And you have to remember, right, like these guys, these disciples weren't just amateur boaters out on the weekend at Lake Cumberland. These were guys who spent day and night on the boat. These were guys who spent every waking hour fishing until Jesus came along in their life. And so they're looking at this going, these are unprecedented times in the boat. I don't imagine they use that word, but I know you all, like me, are as sick as can be about hearing that word. But the fishermen know the same thing, right? Everything's been normal, everything's been calm, and then all of a sudden it's chaos. Absolute havoc. And they get scared. And this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Chaos, havoc, fear. We've been there. We are there. And here's what I think is crazy is right now, if you're a believer, if you're a follower of Jesus, you're going, okay, the unprecedented thing, it's happening, I see it. Jesus, where are you? God, where are you in the midst of this craziness? Where are you in the midst of a global pandemic, in the midst of race riots, in the midst of whether or not I should send my kid back to school or whether or not I should withdraw, what I should do, how I'm going to work? God, where are you? And this is in this flash moment, the disciples are going through the exact same thing. In this moment, the disciples are having these same questions because Jesus is in the boat with them, and this storm has come, and this storm is unlike any storm they've ever seen before. And it says in verse 38, it says, Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, Jesus, don't you care if we drown? They're in a boat, and this boat is big enough for Jesus to be sleeping privately somewhere. This boat is big enough also that waves are crashing over the top of the boat. So I get the fear. I understand it. But I'm also like, hey, don't you think you should mind how you talk to, I don't know, Jesus? But I hear this sass in their voice. They're shaking him and they're going, don't you care if we drown? Don't you care if we're not going to make it? And then I start to remember, like, oh yeah, aren't I the guy who lays awake at 3 a.m? Going, Jesus, they're asking us not to meet in person again. Jesus, people aren't watching online like they used to. Jesus, people aren't attending like they used to. Jesus, people aren't connecting like they were. Don't you care? Don't you know? And it's the same thing that happens where this fear just kind of overtakes us. I've told you a lot of times I have 2 boys. Abel is 6 and Cohen is 4. And when you have kids, your kids are afraid of some of the funniest things. Cohen does not like to be called a baby or little boy. He wants to be a big boy. He wants to be like his brother. He wants to be 6. He wants to be 8. But Cohen also is not afraid to use the little boy status to his advantage. We have a basement and an upper story and a main floor in our house. And Cohen refuses to be on any of those floors alone. Even if it's Abel, even if it's mom, dad, if somebody else is at the house, he just doesn't want to be alone. So if he finds himself alone on the 2nd floor or alone in the basement, he'll start crying out, "You can't leave little boy alone!" And it's so funny because every time I'm like, dude, we're in the house. Like, when you're on the 2nd floor, no one can get to you without coming through the door. We're watching first. Like, it's okay. But in his 4-year-old mind, he cannot grasp it. He'll say, "I need to see you. I need to know you're up here." And we're watching TV, we're doing our thing, we're working really hard in the office kind of stuff. And we're like, "Buddy, I can't come upstairs right now. I've got things to do." And so what happens all the time is we're going in this story. And we say, "Jesus, I'm afraid. Jesus, I'm scared. Jesus, I can't see you." And Jesus is standing on high. God is sitting on the throne. And he's going, "I'm watching you right now." Because I know exactly what's going to happen. And see, what happens so often is when our fear fuels us, we don't believe that. When our fear is what fuels us, when our fear is what drives us, we start thinking, "You know what? All right, God, if you're not going to handle this, I'm going to handle it on my own. I'm going to stand up for what I need to. I'm going to fight for me. I'm going to drive evil out of this world by myself." And Jesus is going, No. Trust that I'm here. Verse 39 says, "He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' And then the wind died down, and it was completely calm." The commentaries will tell us that this is part of what proves it was a miracle. Because you've been at the beach, you've been in the ocean, you've been at a lake. If a storm comes, even after the storm, there's still waves, right? Like there's still residual left from the storm. But Mark makes it clear that the sea is completely calm. Because Jesus didn't just stop the storm, he ended it. Because they asked. And here's the thing. I think for a lot of us, we have this twisted view of our theology, of our belief in God, and we want to say, why would God cause the pandemic? Why would God cause this or that to happen? Why would God cause me to lose someone I love? Why would God cause... And I think what happens a lot of times is that we view God as this puppet master pulling all of these strings. But the truth is that God created the world and gave us choice. And the choices have consequences, and our choices have consequences, and other people's choices have consequences in our life. And what happens a lot of times is I think that choices and people and other things in life have happened that lead to consequences that we have to suffer. And I think what happens is we look up and we say, "God, why would you cause this?" And God's looking at us and he's going, I didn't cause it, I just allowed it to happen. And even if God didn't cause it, even though God's not sending it to punish the earth, I still believe that there's a possibility and that there is an opportunity for God to calm it. For God to calm this storm in your life. And it might not look like you want it to. You might want it to look like your guy getting elected. You might want it to look like your kids getting to go to a private school. You might want it to look like your bank account being full. You might want it to look like 1,000 different things. But here, what I know is this. I know that there's an opportunity in your life that even though God did not cause the storm, that God is willing to calm the storm if you ask. And even if it doesn't look like you think, the storm that's brewing in your heart, the storm that's brewing in your brain, the storm that's causing you sleepless nights is the very one that God, the Creator, is willing to calm. If you ask. He says in verse 40, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And so this is what I've tried to tell myself in my own life. Just this week, I was all kinds of anxious about stuff. And I was sitting and I was like, man, I'm going to get over this. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to work through this fear in my life because I know that whatever happens, God is in control. I know that the Bible tells me that whatever happens, Jesus wins in the end. As hard as things get, as difficult as things are, as bleak as things look, I know the end to the story. And the end of the story is that Jesus wins, and we, as followers of Jesus, go to heaven and we celebrate, and he creates the new heavens and the new earth, and everything is okay. So this fear that I have, this moment I'm afraid, this is me on the second floor shouting, God, I don't want to be up here by myself. And God, the Creator, is going, I am right here, ready to calm the storm. See, here's the thing. If you're a follower of Jesus and your fear is what fuels you, you spend a lot of times worrying, spend a lot of times afraid. I should have said this earlier. I'm going to say it now. There are people who have a problem with their brain because the brain is an organ just like the heart, just like the kidney. And there are people for whom anxiety and worry and depression and those sorts of mental problems aren't just a thing people talk about, aren't just a thing you can pray away. There are times where we need to use the doctors and the brains that God has given us to medically treat issues. But there are also times for all of us when our fear drives us because we refuse to choose faith. Those are the kind of times marked with skepticism, when we don't want to believe anything anybody wants to say. Those are the kind of times where it's marked with us sharply and regularly criticizing other people. Those are the times that are marked with us arguing time and time again, fighting for ourselves time and time again. Those are the kinds of ways that fear fuels us. But when our faith fuels us, is we know we see a bigger picture. When our faith fuels us is when we know everything's going to be okay. When our faith fuels us is when everything is drastically different because we trust in God to care for us and to provide for us. So here's what I'm asking you today. Today I'm asking you to regularly make the decision to cross the bridge from fear to faith. It's okay to be worried. It's okay to be concerned. It's okay to be aware. But don't let your fear be the thing that drives you. Cross the bridge from being afraid to being faithful. Cross the bridge from being worried to being trusting. And make the decision to say, today, this moment, this situation, I will not let fear drive me. Because the reality is that Jesus overcomes the world. And that Jesus is not on the edge of his throne watching the pandemic. Jesus is not on the edge of the throne wondering if your child goes back to school. Jesus is not on the edge of the throne wondering if we're all going to be okay, because he knows. And he knows because he went to this earth. And he came to this earth to die for you and me. And so I'm going to challenge you at House Party Church. And I want to challenge you to take some bread and take some cup. And as a family, whether it's juice or Coca-Cola, great Kool-Aid, to take that cup and pass it around the family and remember, this is Jesus' body broken for me. This is Jesus' blood poured out for me. This is why I don't have to fear, because Jesus came to defeat death and defeat evil once and for all. And I don't have to let my fear fuel me. I can let my faith. Even though God didn't cause the storm, God will calm this storm in my life.
I'm holding on to faith, 'cause I know you'll make a way. And I don't always understand, and I don't always get to see, but I will believe it, and I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. I'm sun standing on the world, and calling heaven down to earth. You will fight my enemies, and this will end in victory. And I will believe it, yes, I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall. You use songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. And I know that I know you never fail. Yes, I know that I know you never will. Yes, I know that I know you never fail. Yes, I know that I know you never will. You make mountains move, you make giants fall. You use songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. You make mountains move, you make giants fall. You use songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. Father of kindness, you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness, you have filled me with peace. Giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing. Father of kindness, you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness, you have filled me with peace. Giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing. Faithful you are, faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are, and all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen. Beautiful Savior, you have brought me near. You pulled me from the ashes, you have broken every curse. Blessed Redeemer, you have set this captive free. Lord, I can't help but see. yes and amen. I will rest on your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. Faithful you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are. And all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen.
Was that on purpose? Did you do that on purpose?
Maybe.